Let me be honest with you as a woman. When we move on to someone new, something happens in our minds that we don't talk about, something that would change the way you see everything that's happening right now. I know what you're feeling. You saw her with him, and your brain immediately went to the worst place. You're wondering if he's better than you. You're replaying everything, trying to figure out where you lost. But here's what you can't see from where you're standing. There's a process that starts in a woman's mind the moment she enters a new relationship. It doesn't happen right away. It takes time, but when it kicks in, it changes everything about how she sees him and how she remembers you. Most men have no idea this is happening. And because they don't know, they react in exactly the wrong way. They do the one thing that destroys what could have been their greatest advantage. I'm going to walk you through exactly what this process is, when it starts, what triggers it, and what it means for you. Because once you understand this, you'll never look at being replaced the same way again. Now, before we go any further, let me be clear about something. This video isn't about tricks to get her back. It's not about manipulation. And it's not about making her regret leaving you so you can feel better about yourself. What I'm going to share with you comes from a place of understanding, not revenge. Because the truth is, most of what happens in a woman's mind after she moves on isn't something she controls. It's not calculated. It's psychology. And once you understand that psychology, you stop being the guy who sits around wondering what went wrong. You become the man who sees the full picture. So if you're here hoping I'll tell you how to win her back, that's not what this is. But if you're here because you want to understand what's actually happening, why it happens, and what it means for you moving forward, then stay with me. Because what I'm about to explain changes everything. Here's what most men don't understand about being replaced. When she moves on to someone new, your brain tells you a story. It says, she's happy now, she forgot about you, you lost. And that story does something dangerous. It makes you feel like you need to do something. Reach out. Prove yourself. Remind her you exist. Or worse, it sends you down a spiral. Checking her social media. Analyzing every photo. Wondering if he's funnier than you. Better looking, more successful. But here's the thing you're missing. While you're sitting there convinced that you've been erased from her mind, something else is happening. Something she probably doesn't even realize herself. The moment a woman enters a new relationship, a timer starts. Not a countdown to happiness. A countdown to comparison. Because no matter how excited she is about someone new, her brain doesn't just delete the men who mattered before. It holds on to them, and it uses them as a filter for everything that comes next. The question isn't whether she'll compare him to you. She will. The question is what happens when she does. So here's what I'm going to walk you through. First, I'll show you the timeline. When comparison actually starts in a new relationship, and why it takes longer than you think. Then, I'll break down the 5 specific moments that trigger her to measure him against you. These aren't random. They're predictable. And once you know them, you'll never wonder what is she thinking again. After that, I'll explain why you win those comparisons. Not because you're perfect, but because of something most men never realize about how women remember the men who mattered. And finally, I'll tell you what this actually means for your life going forward. Because understanding this changes more than just how you see her. It changes how you see yourself. Stay with me through this. By the end, you'll understand something that most men spend years confused about. Let's start with the timeline. Because most men get this completely wrong. When she first gets with someone new, comparison doesn't happen. At least, not consciously. The beginning of a new relationship is all about novelty. Everything feels fresh, different, exciting. Her brain is flooded with chemicals that make the new guy seem like exactly what she needed. And during this phase, you barely exist in her mind. Not because you didn't matter, but because her brain is too busy being high on something new. This is what I call the honeymoon window. And it can last anywhere from a few weeks to several months, depending on how intense the new relationship is. Here's what most men do during this time. They see her happy with someone else, and they assume it's permanent. They think the excitement she's showing means she made the right choice, that she's over you, that you've been replaced in every way that matters. But that's not how it works. The honeymoon window isn't real life. It's a chemical reaction. And like every chemical reaction, it has a half-life. So here's what happens next. And this is the part no one talks about. The honeymoon fades. It always does. The chemicals level out. The excitement becomes routine. And suddenly, the things that felt so new and exciting start feeling ordinary. This is when the cracks appear. Maybe he says something insensitive during an argument. Maybe he doesn't show up the way she expected when she needed support. Maybe she realizes that the butterflies she felt in the beginning aren't coming back the way they used to. And in that moment, something shifts inside her. Her brain stops comparing him to an ideal. And it starts comparing him to something real, someone she actually experienced. You hated her ex. You hated her ex. Not because she's trying to. It happens automatically. The brain looks for reference points when it's trying to evaluate something. And if you were someone who created real emotional experiences with her, real moments that meant something, you become that reference point whether she wants you to or not. This is the moment most men never see. They think because months have passed, they've been forgotten. They assume that time erases everything. But the truth is, the longer she's with him, the more clearly she starts to remember what it felt like to be with you. The honeymoon collapse isn't the end of her new relationship, but it is the beginning of the comparison process. And from this point forward, every disappointment, every gap, every moment where he falls short, gets measured against what she had before. Now, I want to be clear about something. This doesn't mean she's sitting around thinking about you all day. It doesn't mean she regrets her choice every moment. What it means is that when certain situations arise, when certain feelings come up, your memory gets activated. And she measures her current reality against that memory. Which brings us to the specific moments that trigger this. Because comparison isn't constant. It's not happening every day. It happens at very predictable times, in very predictable situations. Let's break down the 5 moments when comparison gets triggered. These aren't guesses. These are patterns that show up consistently. Moment 1. The first real disappointment. Every new relationship has a honeymoon where he can do no wrong. But eventually, he does something that lets her down. Maybe he forgets something important. Maybe he doesn't show up when she needed him to. Maybe he handles a situation in a way that makes her feel dismissed. And in that moment of disappointment, her brain does something automatic. It asks, would he have done that? She's not consciously thinking about you, but your memory becomes the measuring stick. And if you were someone who showed up differently, who handled things with more care, that gap becomes obvious to her. Moment 2. When she needs emotional support and doesn't get it. This one is huge. Women remember how men made them feel during hard moments. When she's stressed, overwhelmed, or going through something difficult, she looks to her partner for comfort. And if the new guy doesn't know how to hold space for her, if he tries to fix instead of listen, if he gets frustrated when she's emotional, she remembers the man who did it differently. If you were someone who made her feel safe when she was falling apart, that memory doesn't disappear. It becomes the standard she measures every future partner against. Moment 3. Intimacy that feels hollow. I'm not just talking about physical intimacy. I'm talking about connection. The feeling that someone truly sees you. New relationships often have passion. But passion without depth feels empty over time. And when she's lying next to someone who doesn't really know her, who doesn't understand her the way someone else did, that's when the comparison hits hardest. If you created moments where she felt genuinely understood, where conversations went deeper than surface level, where she could be fully herself without pretending, that kind of intimacy is rare. And she knows it. If you've made it this far, you already understand more than most men ever will about how women process these situations. But here's where it gets even more important. Moment 4. The small things that used to be there. This one catches women off guard. It's not the big romantic gestures she misses. It's the small stuff. The way you remembered little details. The way you checked in on her day. The inside jokes. The comfortable silences. New relationships are exciting, but they don't have history. They don't have the small accumulated moments that made her feel known. And when she realizes that something is missing, something she can't quite name, it's often these small things. The texture of being with someone who actually knew her. Moment 5. When someone else brings you up. This is the trigger most men don't think about. A friend mentions your name. A family member asks how you're doing. She sees something that reminds her of you. External triggers are powerful because they bypass her defenses. She's not choosing to think about you. The thought just appears. And in that moment, she's forced to confront how she feels about the comparison. If people who knew you both liked you, respected you, thought highly of you, that social proof stays with her. And it makes her question whether she made the right choice. These 5 moments aren't rare. They happen in every relationship. And every time they happen, the comparison process gets activated. Now, let's talk about why you come out ahead in those comparisons. Because this is the part that changes everything. Here's the part most men never understand. And once you get this, you'll never see yourself the same way again. When a woman compares her new guy to you, you have an unfair advantage. Not because you're better than him in every way, but because of how memory works. Let me explain. When she remembers you, she's not remembering the arguments. She's not remembering the frustrating moments or the times you let her down. Memory doesn't work like a recording. It works like a highlight reel. Over time, the negative fades and the positive becomes sharper. This means the version of you that lives in her mind isn't the real you. It's an idealized you. The best moments, the deepest conversations, the times you made her feel something she can't forget. And that's who she's comparing him to. Not the full complicated version of you. The greatest hits version. He never stood a chance. This is what I call the ghost standard. You become a ghost in her mind that her new relationship has to live up to. And ghosts are impossible to compete with because they only exist in the best light. But there's something even more important here. Novelty fades. Every new relationship eventually becomes an old relationship. The excitement wears off. The newness disappears. And what's left is the actual substance of who someone is. Emotional depth doesn't fade the same way. If you were someone who made her feel truly understood, who created safety, who gave her moments of real connection, that kind of depth becomes more valuable over time, not less. The new guy might have given her excitement, but excitement is a feeling that always decreases. What you gave her, if you gave her depth, is a feeling that she keeps looking for and rarely finds. Here's the truth about why you win these comparisons. It's not about who's more attractive. It's not about who makes more money. It's not about who's funnier or more successful on paper. It's about irreplaceability. The things that make someone irreplaceable aren't external. They're internal. It's how you made her feel. It's the emotional experiences you created together. It's the sense that you actually knew her in a way that few people do. And if that was true about your relationship, then she's carrying that with her into every relationship that comes after. Every time her new guy fails to reach that depth, she remembers what it felt like when someone did. That's not something he can compete with. Because he's starting from zero while you're already in her memory as the benchmark. Now, here's what this actually means for you. Because understanding this psychology is only useful if you know what to do with it. So now you understand the psychology. You know when comparison happens. You know why you win. But here's where most men destroy everything we just talked about. They hear this and think, great. So I should reach out. I should remind her I exist. No. That instinct is exactly what kills your advantage. The ghost standard only works because you're not there. The idealized version of you in her mind exists precisely because you're not showing up in reality to contradict it. The moment you reach out, you stop being the benchmark and start being a real person again. With flaws. With neediness. With desperation. And desperation destroys everything. The power you have comes from absence. From the space that allows her to idealize what you had together. When you fill that space with texts and calls, you erase the mystery. You replace the highlight reel with reality. And reality always disappoints compared to memory. Your silence is your greatest asset. Not silence as a game. Silence as genuinely moving forward with your life. Because here's the paradox. The less you try to win her back, the more you win the comparison. The less you chase, the more valuable you become in her mind. And that brings us to something I need to be honest with you about. Because what I'm about to say might not be what you want to hear. Here's the controversial truth I need to tell you. Whether she comes back or not doesn't matter. I know that's hard to hear. Some of you clicked on this video hoping I'd give you a roadmap to get her back. Hoping that understanding the comparison process would help you win her over again. But that's not the real victory here. The real victory is understanding that you already occupy space in her mind that can't be erased. You've already become the standard she'll measure other men against, whether she acts on that or not, whether she ever reaches out or not. That doesn't change what you've left behind. And here's the harder truth. Some of you don't want to understand this psychology. You want to use it. You want to know how comparison works so you can manipulate her into coming back. So you can wait for the right moment to swoop in. That's not strength. That's a different kind of weakness. The man who wins this comparison isn't the man sitting around waiting for her to come back. He's the man who genuinely moves forward. Who takes the value he created in that relationship and creates it again. With someone who chooses to stay. Because here's what I want you to really think about. What kind of man do you want to be? The one who waits in the shadows hoping she regrets her choice? Or the one who knows his worth and builds a life so good that her comparison becomes irrelevant? She might come back. She might not. But your value doesn't depend on her decision. The ghost standard you've created proves something important. It proves that you're capable of creating depth, connection, and emotional experiences that stay with someone long after you're gone. That's rare. That's valuable. And that doesn't go away just because one person chose someone else. The question isn't whether you won the comparison. You did. The question is what you do with that knowledge. Now I want to hear from you. Have you experienced this? Have you been the man she moved on from, only to find out later that you never really left her mind? Or maybe you're in the middle of it right now, watching her with someone new, wondering what's happening behind the scenes. Drop a comment and tell me your story. Tell me what moment hit you the hardest in this video. Tell me what you're going to do differently now that you understand this. I read every single comment, and I respond to as many as I can. because this isn't just content to me. This is a conversation about understanding ourselves and the people we care about. And if this video helped you see your situation differently, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's sitting where you were when you clicked on this video. Because the truth is, most men spend years feeling like failures after a woman moves on. They never learn what you learned today. They never understand that the story doesn't end when she walks away. You're not the man who got left behind. You're the man who left something behind. Something that can't be replaced. Now go build a life that proves it.